What's up, you guys? Sean Ross Sapp, managing editor, FightfulMMA.com, here with your quick results of UFC Phoenix. Now, I'm not going in depth on this show. I had to cover WWE Elimination Chamber. We will, however, on Tuesday on the Fightful MMA podcast with James Lynch and Showdown Joe. Also, check out my highly trashed Bellator review. Some Bellator fans weren't so happy that I didn't exactly like those two shows this weekend. But let's go ahead and run through the results of this show. I'm going to show you all highlights of the Velasquez Ngannou fight too. So let's go ahead and get into that. Cain Velasquez defeated by Francis Ngannou in a matter of seconds. Now, a lot of people attributed this to a knee buckling. But quite frankly, I think it's because Cain Velasquez got caught with a short uppercut and got put down, then his knee buckled. Quite frankly, I didn't think that his knee buckled, which caused that. He very clearly got caught with that uppercut and flattened. Now, Cain Velasquez, I had mentioned this before, had not fought since Fightful launched in 2016. That was the last time. Until tonight, Brock Lesnar had fought more recently than him, and Brock Lesnar still has more recent offense than Cain Velasquez. This puts Cain Velasquez at losing 2 of his last 3 fights for the first time ever. He's won 1 fight in the past 5 years. Meanwhile, Francis Ngannou comes back after losing 2 in a row and has finished 2 opponents, Curtis Blaydes and Cain Velasquez, in under a minute. That has to be applauded. That has to be looked at. And he got booed all week and was a class act through all of this. Francis Ngannou emerges victorious, a major win for Francis Ngannou. Cain Velasquez says that he wants to get back in there soon. Do we ever know how soon that is with Cain Velasquez? Wouldn't surprise me to not see him back until 2021. That's just the nature of his career. He's had a lot of years. I mean, he's been sidelined for a year, like what, 3 or 4 times at this point? Paul Felder defeated number 10, James Vick. Really implemented those leg kicks well. A nice victory for Paul Felder there as he put away James Vick. James Vick just didn't have an answer for that. And Paul Felder worked away, especially in that 3rd round, really finished the fight strong with those leg kicks, in my opinion. Cynthia Calvillo at number 12 defeated number 11, Courtney Casey. The rankings here were very confusing. I have no idea how Courtney Casey came into this fight ranked ahead of Cynthia Calvillo. And the fight really showed. Unanimous decision victory for Cynthia Calvillo. Courtney Casey will hang around in this division. I mean, she'll still be a top 15 person, but Cynthia Calvillo should probably be a top 10 name at this point. Kron Gracie defeated Alex Caceres submission via rear naked choke. Gracie had not won a UFC fight since 1994, so this is a big one for them. They got some success with Kron and Neiman, and Gracie doing exactly what he should have done. Caceres was one of my I got 5 on it, but you couldn't make that work. Another one of my I got 5 on it was Brian Barberena. And as you can see, well done. You can't count out Brian Barberena, but you also can't count out Vicente Luque, even if he's in a bit of a hole. I think Brian Barberena was going to win that fight if he lasted 6 more seconds, but he didn't. This is a must-watch fight. Vicente Luque and Brian Barberena threw down. This was incredible. It was such a blast to watch. I was trying to pay attention to this as best I could while the Chamber show was on, and it got my attention. You have to go out of your way to see this fight. Andre Fili defeated Miles Jury by unanimous decision. You got to wonder if Miles Jury is what he used to be. He had quite a bit of time off and just hasn't looked the same since he's come back. Andre Fili picks up that win. Reminder, Tuesday, 2 p.m. Eastern. We're going to go over these at length. Number 7, Aljamain Sterling defeated number 5, Jimmy Rivera via unanimous decision. Aljamain Sterling, I thought for a while, quite frankly, I don't want to say a bust, but I didn't think he was ever going to quite live up to his potential. He held out. He got that good contract, and then he lost 3 out of 5 fights. He lost back-to-back to Caraway and a Sunsell. Those were splits, though. But then when he came back, he beat Mendez and Barao, and that's when Barao maybe still was something. You're like, all right. Gets knocked out immediately by Marias. He has not let that disturb him. Won 5 of his last 6. This win over Jimmy Rivera is a big one, man, because Jimmy Rivera was real close to a title shot. I don't want to say one win away from a title shot because We see that Moraes hasn't gotten that title shot yet. But then he came right back after losing that and beat John Dodson. Jimmy Rivera is still very much in the mix, but he's running into an Aljamain Sterling who is turning into everything that we thought he was before 2016, living up to that deal where he held out and really did his best. Aljamain Sterling, man, he has just, I often mention, man, like, okay, he's no longer the 24-year-old prospect. Now he's a 29-year-old man about to turn 30 this year, and he's really got to implement all this stuff and go on his run, and he's doing that. If Marlon Moraes is up there for a title shot, Aljamain Sterling is right behind him with that win over Jimmy Rivera. That win over Cody Stamann was really good. The win over Barao isn't as great now, as we found out, but still nice to have on your resume. Speaking of Barao, he may very well be out of the UFC. He blew weight again, probably earned Luke Sanders another 10 grand, but now Renan Barao has lost 6 of 7. He has only won 2 fights since losing to TJ Dillashaw in 2014. You got to draw the parallels to a lot of the testing and stuff like that. He's fought at bantamweight 1 time in his last 4 fights because they've all been catch weights because he's either missed weight or they've agreed to a different weight. He cannot compete at the top levels against guys like Aljamain Sterling. He cannot compete at the 10 to 15 range, guys like Brian Kelleher. And apparently he can't compete out of the top 15 against Andre Ewell and Luke Sanders. Luke Sanders was fighting for his job as well. And Fightful's James Lynch interviewed him, and James had said, man, I don't know quite what to make of Luke Sanders training outside of his camp. And, it's well publicized. He and his girlfriend, Becky Lynch, split last year. He had to take on all the responsibility of his child full time, him handling mother and the father roles. And now he's won two out of 3 after that loss to Rani Yahya. He bounced back and is still around the UFC. And now he's probably bought himself at least 2 fights. If the worst case scenario, he loses 2 in a row, he can turn around and still be in the UFC. Renan Barao, on the other hand, he might get cut. He should get cut. He'll probably find a home in Bellator where he'll fight Pitbull brothers somewhere. Manny Bermudez defeated Benito Lopez, a quick Darce choke in about 3 minutes. Andrea Lee defeated Ashley Evans-Smith. That is a sneaky top 15 fight. Good to see Andrea Lee get into the win column while her piece of shit husband is still on the run. That's got to be horrifying. So good for her. I like Ashley Evans-Smith a lot, but class in this one. Had some moments of glory. Nick Lentz defeated Scott Holtzman. Nick Lentz, man, a guy who keeps hanging around, won 3 out of 4 quietly, has won 2 in a row, beat Dre Maynard, beat Will Brooks, has some good looking wins, man. He really does. And he's a guy who's been in the UFC for a decade now. A decade, and has never went on that run, at least since his initial run, where he was technically unbeaten in his first 7 fights because there was a draw, there was a no contest in there. But he has some trouble beating the Mendezes and Oliveras and the Islam Makhachevs of the world. But he's a guy that is a fringe top 15er. You look at him, he's won, I think, 5 of 7, so a decent name. But he definitely not the answer to Conor McGregor. That's for sure, as many suggested. Emily Whitmire just put out Alexandra Albu, who was 3-0. Albu was 2-0 in the UFC, but she was facing people like Kaylin Curran, who were just not good. Kaylin Curran's just not good. And Emily Whitmire, very emotional and very good to see her win. She had an interview with Fightful.com as well. Leave us a thumbs up on this video. Subscribe. We are going to cover this, as I mentioned, at length on the Fightful MMA podcast this Tuesday. Also, Joe Rogan on his Fight Companion podcast seemed to indicate that that Conor McGregor versus Donald Cerrone was a quote-unquote done deal. If that were the case, that would be a big move for the UFC. It's good that they have John Jones fighting semi-regularly again, but to be able to get Conor McGregor back in the cage and against Donald Cerrone, that's not a title fight. That's a pay-per-view main event without a title needed. You go ahead, you stack some people that you want to push on the undercard of that show, and you're doing all right. Reminder, Showdown Joe, James Lynch, both will join me this Tuesday, 2 p.m. Eastern. Head over to FightfulMMA.com. If you're not joining in on those live coverages, you really should. We have a pick'em game that we play, hundreds of comments in those live coverages that we do. A great community that we have over there. We have embraced the Talking MMA community. 900 comments on tonight's show. But I want to thank you all so much for joining me on this quick edition of the Fightful MMA podcast. We will talk about how UFC 236 is 2 months away and doesn't have anything or a location announced. Till next time, we're out.